हेलो एवरीवन, आज हम देख रहे हैं चैप्टर बोरोइंग कॉस्ट. सो व्हाट इज बोरोइंग कॉस्ट? व्हाट आर बोरोइंग्स? द फंड्स वी बोरो आर कॉल्ड बोरोइंग्स एंड द कॉस्ट ऑन दोज फंड्स आर बोरोइंग कॉस्ट. इंटरेस्ट एंड अदर कॉस्ट विच इनकर ऑन द बोरोइंग्स आर कॉल्ड बोरोइंग कॉस्ट. ओके, सो बोरोइंग्स हमारी दो तरह की होती हैं, स्पेसिफिक बोरोइंग्स और जनरल बोरोइंग्स. स्पेसिफिक बोरोइंग्स आर दोज विच आर borrowed for a particular purpose and other than those are called general borrowings. Okay, so if we have taken borrowings for a specific purpose and our purpose is completed, then those borrowings are also considered as general borrowings. Okay, so how we will calculate the specific borrowing? Specific borrowing, we calculate specific borrowing cost as expense on qualifying asset incurred into interest rate on specific borrowings. Okay, so जो भी हमारा क्वालिफाइंग एसेट पे एक्सपेंस इनकर हुआ है इनटू में इंटरेस्ट रेट ऑन स्पेसिफिक बोरोइंग्स provided the expense is actual incurred. Okay, and further provided that if during that period if there is any investment income or earned on that borrowed funds, then that amount is also get deducted from this investment income. So if you have borrowed 1 lakh rupees on 1st April and till 1st May you have not used any of funds but you have invested because in that period the capitalization or your expenditure on qualifying asset has not started and you have invested those funds and you have earned interest of 10,000. In the remaining period you have incur funds on your qualifying asset. So if the total interest expense of the whole period is let's say 20,000, so you will not capitalize 20,000 rupees, you will capitalize 20,000 minus 10,000 of interest income which you have earned from those. So you will capitalize 10,000 of amount. So the borrowing cost have two treatments. So either you will capitalize it or you will expense it off. Okay, so if the funds are used for the qualifying asset, then it will be capitalized for qualifying asset. Second, that these may have future economic benefit and cost can be measured reliably. Cost reliably measure हो जाए, then we will capitalize, otherwise we will expense it off in the P&L account in the same period. Okay, so this is how we calculate the specific borrowing cost. Now the next is general borrowing cost. How we will calculate general borrowing cost? In general borrowing cost we have a expenditure incurred on qualifying asset during the period and then we have to find the capitalization rate. So these are general borrowings. Let us say we have 4 general borrowings. We have like working capital loan, other loan, whatever. So like 1 lakh at the rate 5%, 2 lakh at the rate 3%, 4 lakh at the rate 7%. So we have number of borrowings. So these are general borrowings which are not taken for any specific purpose. Also these also have that specific borrowings whose purpose has been accomplished. Okay, so from these borrowings we will calculate a capitalization rate और इस कैपिटलाइजेशन रेट को हम एक्सपेंडिचर इनकर्ड ऑन क्वालिफाइंग एसेट पर जैसे अप्लाई करेंगे तो हमारी जनरल बोरोइंग कॉस्ट आ जाएगी. सो हाउ वी विल कैलकुलेट द कैपिटलाइजेशन रेट? कैपिटलाइजेशन रेट विल बी कैलकुलेटेड एज वेटेड एवरेज बोरोइंग कॉस्ट ऑन आउटस्टैंडिंग बोरोइंग्स डिवाइडेड बाय टोटल आउटस्टैंडिंग बोरोइंग ड्यूरिंग पीरियड. सो इस केस में हमारी वेटेड एवरेज बोरोइंग कॉस्ट ऑन आउटस्टैंडिंग बोरोइंग्स क्या होगी? 1 लाख एट द रेट 5%. लेट हमने ये 1 अप्रैल को लिया है, सो इनटू में 12/12 for the whole period plus 2 lakh at the rate 3%. This is all let's say it's on 1st June, so it will be 10/12 plus 4 lakh at the rate 7% and ये हमने लिया है दिसंबर में 1st of 12, so it will be 4/12. So it will be weighted average borrowing cost on outstanding borrowings, and when we take total outstanding borrowing during period, then we will take it 1 lakh into 12/12 plus 2 lakh into 10/12 and 4 lakh into 4/12. So when we calculate this equation, then we will get a capitalization rate, and when we multiply this capitalization rate with the expenditure incurred on qualifying asset, then we will get the general borrowing cost. And specific borrowing cost plus general borrowing cost is equal to total borrowing cost. that we will capitalize. Okay, so this is your whole chapter. Also one other thing, so when we will start the capitalization? At the commencement date. When we will stop the capitalization? When all the requirements or all the specific terms have been satisfied, then it is called cessation of capitalization. And if there is certain events or something because of which we have to suspend our project, or we are not able to continue our project, then that period is called then in that period we will not capitalize any of the cost, then that is called suspension of capitalization. Like हमारी बिल्डिंग कंस्ट्रक्ट हो रही थी और फिर बीच में फ्लड आ गई, तो 2 से 3 महीने वो एक पीरियड हो गया कि जहां हम काम नहीं कर पा रहे कंटिन्यू, तो वो 2 से 3 महीने का पीरियड हमारा सस्पेंशन कंसीडर होगा फिर, कि उस पीरियड की जो भी कॉस्ट होगी बोरोइंग कॉस्ट उसको हम कैपिटलाइज नहीं करेंगे. सो दिस इज योर होल चैप्टर. सो आओ एक बार इसको नोट्स में से देख लेते हैं. सो व्हाट इज बोरोइंग कॉस्ट? इंटरेस्ट एंड अदर कॉस्ट incurs in connection with borrowings of funds include interest using EIR as per Ind AS 109, interest on lease liability, exchange difference arising from foreign currency borrowings. ये आपको क्वेश्चंस देख के ज़्यादा अच्छे से समझ में आ जाएगा. नाउ हम इनका देख रहे हैं अकाउंटिंग ट्रीटमेंट. बोरोइंग कॉस्ट या तो कैपिटलाइज होगी या एक्सपेंस ऑफ होगी. कैपिटलाइज एज पार्ट ऑफ एसेट इफ डायरेक्टली एट्रीब्यूटेबल टू एक्विजिशन, कंस्ट्रक्शन और प्रोडक्शन ऑफ क्वालिफाइंग एसेट. ओके, एंड इफ रिकॉग्नाइज एक्सपेंस व्हेन इनकर्ड इन अदर केसेस. इन केस के अलावा अगर कोई भी केस है तो हम उसको एक्सपेंस ऑफ कर देंगे P&L में. ठीक है, अब क्वेश्चन ये कि व्हाट इज क्वालिफाइंग एसेट. सो क्वालिफाइंग एसेट इज एन एसेट व्हिच टेक्स सब्सटेंशियल पीरियड ऑफ टाइम टू गेट रेडी फॉर इट्स इंटेंडेड यूज और सेल. इट इंक्लूड्स इन्वेंट्री, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग प्लांट, इंटेंजिबल एसेट, bearer plants, and excludes inventory produced in large quantity on repetitive basis. Asset ready for intended use or sale when acquired, and CA held for sale in days 105 probably. Financial assets. Asset might be a qualifying asset depending on how management intends to use it. Like assessment of whether an asset is a qualifying asset is made on a combined basis. Acquired asset used in combination with a larger group of asset, then it is not a qualifying asset. And specifically for construction of one qualifying asset, then yes, it is a qualifying asset. Like हमने कोई बिल्डिंग कंस्ट्रक्ट करने के लिए एक लाइसेंस लिया है या तो फिर कोई परमिट लिया है, लेकिन वो स्पेसिफिक उस बिल्डिंग के लिए है, तो वो जो लाइसेंस की उस पर्टिकुलर की कॉस्ट होगी तो वो भी हमारी उसके साथ ही कैपिटलाइज हो जाएगी. ये सब डिपेंड करता है मैनेजमेंट की असेसमेंट पे. ठीक है, तो इसके भी आप क्वेश्चन देखोगे चैप्टर में. सो दिस इज द बोरोइंग कॉस्ट, द अकाउंटिंग ट्रीटमेंट ऑफ बोरोइंग कॉस्ट, एंड दिस इज द डेफिनेशन ऑफ क्वालिफाइंग एसेट. ओके, so these are the conditions. Borrowing costs are capitalized when two conditions are satisfied. It is probable that it will result in future economic benefits to the entity, and cost can be measured reliably. Okay, great. Next is borrowing cost eligible for capitalization. Which borrowing cost is eligible for capitalization, and otherwise we will have to expense it off to P&L. Okay, so those costs that would have been avoided if the expenditure on the qualifying asset had not been made. So there are two types of borrowing cost: specific borrowing cost and general borrowing cost. Specific borrowing cost: entity borrows funds specifically to obtain a qualifying asset. Borrowing cost eligible for capitalization: actual borrowing cost incurred minus investment income on temporary investment on those borrowings. Okay, so like हमारी actual borrowing cost during the year है 1 lakh, और जिस पीरियड में हम उस एसेट पे एक्सपेंडिचर इनकर नहीं कर पाए थे, हमने उसको इन्वेस्ट कर दिया, तो उससे हमारी इनकम आई थी 10,000. सो हमारी 1 लाख की कॉस्ट में से 10,000 घटा दी, तो हमारा एक्चुअल एक्सपेंस इनकर था 90,000. तो हाईएस्ट हम 90,000 ही कैपिटलाइज कर सकते हैं. ओके, एंड दिस नीड्स टू बी ऑन एक्चुअल इनकर्ड बेसिस. ओनली एक्चुअल बोरोइंग कॉस्ट इनकर्ड कैन बी कैपिटलाइज. स्पेसिफिक बोरोइंग कॉस्ट के केस में भी और जनरल बोरोइंग कॉस्ट के केस में भी. वेयर एंटिटी हैज नो बोरोइंग्स एंड यूज इट्स ओन कैश रिसोर्स टू फाइनेंस द कंस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ पीपी, entity cannot assume that interest that could have been earned on that cash represents foregone benefits and could be capitalized. So notional interest हम capitalize नहीं कर सकते, जो actual incur हुआ है हम उसी को बस capitalize कर सकते हैं. ठीक है, great. Now on the general borrowing cost, borrowings that are not specific. If specific borrowing remain outstanding after related asset is ready for use, it becomes general borrowing. Okay, amount of borrowing cost eligible for capitalization is always limited to amount of actual borrowing cost incurred during period. calculated by applying a capitalization rate to expenditure on qualifying asset. Now we are calculating the borrowing cost. So this is specific borrowing cost, this is general borrowing cost on funds borrowed for specific purpose, expenditure incurred on qualifying asset into interest rate on specific borrowings, then borrowing cost on funds borrowed for general purpose but applied on qualifying asset. Firstly calculate capitalization rate, then calculate borrowing cost to be capitalized. How we will calculate borrowing cost to be capitalized? Expenditure incurred on qualifying asset into capitalization rate. What is capitalization rate? Capitalization rate is weighted average borrowing cost on outstanding borrowings of entity divided by total outstanding borrowings of entity during period. इसके लिए हमने नीचे ये एग्जांपल देखा था, ठीक है. Then what is expenditure incurred on qualifying asset? इसके लिए आप ये देख लेना, इस पे आपको क्वेश्चंस भी मिल जाएंगे. Next is our period, which is period of capitalization, when we will start, when we will suspend, and when we will cessation of capitalization. So commencement of capitalization. Capitalization starts from date when entity first meets all of the following conditions. It incurs expenditure for the asset, it incurs borrowing cost, it undertakes activity that are necessary to prepare asset for its intended use and sale. Suspension of capitalization, when active development of qualifying asset is suspended during extended periods. Period of temporary delay is not suspension if we are temporarily delayed because of any reason like labor strikes and whatever. So cessation of capitalization, when substantially all the activities necessary to prepare the qualifying asset are complete, then it is called cessation of capitalization. When entity completes the construction in parts and each part is capable of being used while construction continues on other parts, entity shall cease capitalizing that part. So let us say we have a building and we are constructing the building. So now in the first year our first floor is completed, then in the second year the second floor is completed, now in the third year our whole building is completed. So we are not required to capitalize the whole building at once in the fourth year. We will capitalize floor wise floor because we can use it on individual basis. So we can capitalize it in first year, this in second year, and this in the third year. So ये यही लिखा है, when entity completes the construction in parts and each part is capable of being used while construction continues on other parts, entity shall cease capitalizing that part. So this is your whole chapter. So let's recapture it. So what is borrowing cost? Interest and other cost incurs in connection with borrowing of funds. Accounting treatment. Borrowing cost can be capitalized and can be expense of capitalized if it is used in directly attributable to acquisition, construction and production of asset. Borrowing cost, इसमें अगर दो condition satisfy हो जाए, future economic benefit to entity and cost can be measured reliably. And what is qualifying asset? Takes substantial period of time to get ready for its intended use or sale, includes, excludes, and management assessment के बेस पे हम related assets को capitalize करते हैं. Then the period, commencement of capitalization, suspension, cessation, and then borrowing cost. Two types of borrowing: specific borrowing, general borrowings. Entity borrows funds specifically to obtain a qualifying asset. Actual cost incurred minus investment income or temporary investment of borrowings. Notional borrowing cost cannot be capitalized. Only actual borrowing cost can be capitalized. Okay, what is general borrowing cost other than specific borrowings? If specific borrowing purpose has been completed, then it is called general borrowing. Amount of borrowing cost, capitalization always limited to amount of actual borrowing cost incurred. Actual borrowing cost incurred will be always there in specific borrowings and in general borrowing also. So this is how we calculate borrowing cost. In specific borrowing cost, expenditure incurred into interest rate on specific borrowings, and in case of general borrowings, expenditure incurred into capitalization rate. This is how we calculate the capitalization rate. So this is your whole chapter. So thank you.